They filled stadiums, defined generations, and lived louder than anyone else. But behind the guitars and screaming crowds, something darker followed them home. Tonight, we uncover 10 legendary rock singers whose rise to fame ended in fatal overdoses and the quiet warning signs the world ignored. Number 1. Jimi Hendrix. September 18, 1970. In London, the event unfolded quietly inside a hotel room. The official finding pointed to barbiturate intoxication, with sleeping medication playing a central role. The substance impaired his reflexes and breathing, leading to a fatal outcome during sleep. There was no sign of violence or external involvement. Medical authorities concluded the cause as complications linked to drug intoxication, marking the sudden end of one of rock music's most influential voices. Jimi Hendrix transformed the electric guitar into something expressive, experimental, and explosive. Rising to global fame in the late 1960s, he became known for performances that blended blues, rock, and psychedelic soundscapes. Songs like Purple Haze and All Along the Watchtower reshaped popular music. His appearance at major festivals cemented him as a cultural symbol of creative freedom. To audiences, he represented a new language of sound, emotion, and rebellion. Born in Seattle, Hendrix grew up in instability and poverty. Shaped by a difficult childhood and frequent family disruptions, music became his escape and identity. After military service, he struggled for recognition before finding success overseas. Constant touring, pressure from management, and racial barriers within the industry weighed heavily on him. These challenges fueled both his creativity and his internal turmoil, shaping a personality marked by sensitivity, ambition, and restlessness. In his final months, exhaustion and health concerns became more visible. Friends noticed changes in his mood and energy as relentless schedules collided with personal strain. Attempts to rest were inconsistent, and dependence on medication increased. Relationships grew tense, and isolation became more frequent. Those close to him sensed he was overwhelmed by fame and expectations. The balance between artistic passion and personal well-being had begun to fracture. The reaction was immediate and global. Fellow musicians spoke of shock and loss, while fans gathered in silence across cities. Music critics re-evaluated his work, recognizing its lasting technical and emotional depth. Industry figures acknowledged how profoundly he changed modern guitar playing. Decades later, his recordings continue to inspire new generations. Jimi Hendrix remains a symbol of creative brilliance, and his legacy endures beyond the tragedy that ended his life. Number 2. Janis Joplin. October 4, 1970. Inside a Los Angeles hotel room, the event was discovered during the early hours of the morning. The official report identified an accidental heroin overdose. Toxicology findings showed a level far beyond recreational use, consistent with a sudden and fatal reaction. There was no evidence of outside involvement. Medical authorities ruled the death accidental, closing the case while leaving behind questions about the pressure surrounding her final days. Janis Joplin became one of the most recognizable voices in rock history. Her raw, raspy sound blended blues, soul, and psychedelic rock in a way that felt unfiltered and emotionally exposed. Performances at major festivals turned her into a symbol of a generation seeking honesty over polish. Songs like Piece of My Heart resonated deeply with audiences. She was celebrated not for perfection, but for vulnerability, intensity, and fearless self-expression. Born in Texas, Joplin grew up feeling isolated and misunderstood. As a teenager, she faced rejection and ridicule, experiences that shaped her defiant personality. Music became both refuge and weapon. After moving through various cities and scenes, she found belonging in counterculture spaces. Fame arrived quickly and without protection. Her sensitivity, combined with sudden global attention, made success both intoxicating and destabilizing. In the months leading up to her death, close friends noticed shifts in her behavior. She struggled with loneliness despite constant attention. Romantic disappointments and creative pressure added weight to her emotional state. Efforts to stay sober were inconsistent. Touring, recording, and public expectations collided with personal insecurity. Those around her sensed a growing divide between the confident performer on stage and the vulnerable woman off camera. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Fellow musicians described her loss as devastating. Fans mourned someone who had voiced feelings they could not express themselves. Critics later acknowledged how she expanded the role of women in rock music. Her recordings continue to influence artists decades later. Janis Joplin remains a lasting symbol of emotional honesty, artistic courage, and the high personal cost of fame. Share your thoughts about her legacy in the comments below. Number 3. Sid Vicious. February 2, 1979. In a New York apartment, the event occurred shortly after his release on bail. Medical authorities confirmed a fatal heroin overdose. Toxicology results indicated a high concentration consistent with accidental ingestion. There were no signs of struggle or third-party involvement. The conclusion was clear and swift. His death came only months after intense legal and personal turmoil, ending a life already spiraling under public scrutiny. Sid Vicious became infamous as the bassist and vocalist presence of the Sex Pistols, one of the most disruptive bands in rock history. Though his musical skill was often debated, his image defined punk rebellion. He represented chaos, rejection of authority, and raw provocation. To fans, he embodied a movement that valued attitude over polish. His presence helped turn punk from underground noise into a global cultural statement. Born in London, Sid Vicious grew up amid instability and neglect. His early life lacked structure, and he gravitated toward music scenes that mirrored his anger and alienation. Punk offered belonging and identity. Sudden fame arrived without guidance or boundaries. His relationship with Nancy Spungen intensified his emotional volatility. Together, they became symbols of excess and self-destruction, reinforcing a public image that blurred performance and reality. As pressures mounted, his health and mental state deteriorated. Substance dependence deepened as legal troubles escalated. Friends described erratic behavior and exhaustion. Isolation increased as trust eroded. The weight of public expectation and personal guilt became overwhelming. Attempts to stabilize his life failed repeatedly. Those close to him sensed he was trapped in a role he no longer controlled, unable to separate the myth from the person. The reaction to his death was immediate and polarizing. Some mourned a misunderstood figure, while others saw it as the inevitable outcome of a destructive lifestyle. Musicians later reflected on how his story exposed the dangers of romanticizing rebellion. Despite controversy, his influence endures. Sid Vicious remains a symbol of punk's raw core, a cautionary figure whose legacy continues to shape discussions about fame and identity. Number 4. Keith Moon. September 7, 1978. In London, the event occurred inside a rented apartment during the night. The official conclusion identified an overdose of clomethazole, a medication prescribed to reduce alcohol withdrawal symptoms. The substance depressed his nervous system while he slept, leading to a fatal outcome. Authorities found no indication of outside involvement. The cause was ruled accidental, underscoring how prescribed medication became unexpectedly dangerous. Keith Moon was the explosive drummer of The Who, famous for a style that was loud, chaotic, and groundbreaking. His playing turned the drums into a lead instrument, driving songs with power and unpredictability. Performances were theatrical and unforgettable. To fans, he represented pure abandon on stage. His influence reshaped rock drumming and inspired generations of musicians who valued energy, personality, and fearless experimentation. Born in England during wartime, Moon grew up amid post-war uncertainty. From an early age, he displayed hyperactive behavior and a hunger for attention. Music became his outlet. Success arrived quickly, bringing wealth and excess without restraint. His humor and recklessness became part of his public persona. Behind the scenes, insecurity and pressure followed him, creating a cycle where entertainment and self-destruction fed each other. In the years before his death, Moon attempted to change his lifestyle. Health concerns and warnings from doctors forced him to confront his habits. Friends noticed he seemed physically weaker but emotionally determined to improve. Treatment involved medication meant to help him rest and stabilize. The transition was difficult. The body he had pushed for years could not easily adapt. One night, that fragile balance failed. The reaction from the music world was one of shock and disbelief. Fellow artists spoke about losing a force of nature. Fans mourned someone whose joy felt larger than life. Critics later emphasized how irreplaceable his drumming style was. His work continues to be studied and celebrated. Keith Moon remains a reminder of rock music's wild spirit and the thin line between excess and endurance. Number 5. Scott Weiland. December 3, 2015. On a tour bus in Minnesota, the event was confirmed during a scheduled stop. The medical examiner determined an accidental overdose involving multiple substances, including cocaine, alcohol, and prescription medication. The combination placed extreme stress on his body and disrupted vital functions. There was no evidence of foul play. Authorities concluded the death resulted from mixed drug toxicity, ending a career defined by reinvention and volatility. Scott Weiland rose to prominence as the lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots, becoming one of the defining voices of 1990s alternative rock. His vocal range and theatrical stage presence set him apart. Albums produced chart-topping singles and earned critical acclaim. He later fronted Velvet Revolver, extending his influence across genres. To fans, he embodied charisma and danger, balancing melodic control with raw emotional force. Born in California, Weiland experienced a childhood marked by instability and adoption, shaping a lifelong search for identity. Music became a place to assert control and self-expression. Rapid success brought wealth and attention, but little protection. Legal troubles and public scrutiny followed. Despite setbacks, he repeatedly returned to the studio, driven by a need to create. His resilience and vulnerability became inseparable parts of his public image. In the years before his death, health struggles were widely discussed. Periods of sobriety alternated with relapse. Relationships with bandmates grew strained as touring demands continued. Family members expressed concern over exhaustion and stress. Performances remained intense, but signs of wear were visible. The pressure to maintain momentum conflicted with attempts to stabilize his life. Those close to him described a man torn between recovery and expectation. The reaction was swift across the music world. Fellow artists spoke of losing a gifted frontman whose voice defined an era. Fans shared memories of songs that carried them through personal moments. Critics reassessed his catalog, noting its lasting influence on modern rock. His recordings continue to resonate with new listeners. Scott Weiland is remembered for artistic range, emotional honesty, and a legacy that endures beyond the struggles that ended his life. Number 6. Lane Staley. April 5, 2002. Inside his Seattle condominium, the event was discovered after weeks of silence. Medical authorities later confirmed a fatal overdose involving heroin and cocaine. Toxicology findings indicated prolonged substance use rather than a sudden incident. There were no signs of outside involvement. The official conclusion described the death as accidental, shaped by long-term dependence that had quietly overtaken his final years. Lane Staley was the unmistakable voice of Alice in Chains, a band that defined the darker edge of 1990s rock. His haunting vocal harmonies and emotional intensity set him apart from his peers. Songs explored pain, isolation, and inner conflict with uncommon honesty. Audiences connected deeply with that vulnerability. To many listeners, his voice became the sound of an era that refused to hide emotional damage. Raised in Washington State, Staley grew up surrounded by music and early creative promise. He showed talent from a young age and found confidence through performance. Fame arrived quickly and dramatically. With it came relentless touring and industry pressure. Personal loss and unstable relationships shaped his worldview. Music became both an outlet and a mirror, reflecting struggles he rarely discussed openly but expressed through lyrics. As time passed, his public appearances grew rare. Health concerns intensified and isolation deepened. Band activities slowed as efforts to support him quietly continued. Friends described a gradual withdrawal from everyday life. Physical decline became noticeable, paired with emotional distance. Attempts at recovery were private and inconsistent. The gap between the powerful voice on recordings and the fragile reality behind closed doors continued to widen. The reaction to his death was profound across the music community. Fellow artists spoke of losing one of rock's most authentic voices. Fans mourned someone who articulated pain they felt but could not name. Critics later emphasized the lasting influence of his work on alternative and metal music. Decades later, his songs remain deeply personal to listeners. Lane Staley endures as a symbol of raw honesty, artistic depth, and the lasting impact of a voice that told the truth. Share how his music affected you in the comments. Number 7. Bradley Nowell. May 25, 1996. In a San Francisco hotel room, the event occurred during a tour stop just days after his wedding. The official report confirmed a fatal heroin overdose. Toxicology findings showed a level strong enough to suppress vital bodily functions during sleep. There was no indication of outside involvement. Authorities ruled the death accidental, marking a sudden end to a rising career at the height of commercial success. Bradley Nowell was the lead singer and creative force behind Sublime, a band that blended rock, punk, reggae, and ska into a sound that felt uniquely Southern California. His laid-back vocals and genre-crossing style resonated strongly with American youth. Songs celebrating freedom, rebellion, and coastal life became anthems. Though mainstream fame arrived late, his influence spread rapidly, shaping alternative rock culture well beyond his lifetime. Born in California, Nowell grew up surrounded by music and surf culture. He showed early talent and curiosity, absorbing diverse musical styles. College years exposed him to broader influences and experimentation. Sublime formed as both a creative outlet and a close-knit community. His personality mixed humor with intensity. Beneath the relaxed image, ambition and restlessness drove him to push boundaries both artistically and personally. In the years leading up to his death, substance dependence became more pronounced. Friends and bandmates noticed growing concern despite moments of optimism. He spoke openly about wanting stability, especially after starting a family. Touring demands and creative pressure complicated those efforts. The contrast between newfound personal responsibility and long-standing habits created emotional strain. That tension followed him into the final weeks of his life. The response to his death was delayed but powerful. Afterward, Sublime's music surged in popularity, introducing his voice to a massive audience. Fellow musicians credited him with expanding rock's musical vocabulary. Fans mourned someone whose songs felt joyful yet painfully honest. Critics later recognized his lasting cultural impact. Bradley Nowell remains a symbol of creative fusion, unfiltered expression, and a legacy that continues to grow long after his passing. Number 8. Shannon Hoon. October 21st, 1995. Inside a tour bus in New Orleans, the event was discovered while the band was traveling between shows. Medical authorities confirmed a fatal cocaine overdose. Toxicology reports indicated acute intoxication during sleep. There was no evidence of outside involvement or violence. The ruling described an accidental death, bringing an abrupt end to a career that was still unfolding in the public eye. Shannon Hoon was the lead singer of Blind Melon, a band that rose quickly in the early 1990s alternative rock scene. His voice carried a vulnerable, soulful quality that stood out amid louder trends. Songs like No Rain became cultural touchstones, played endlessly on radio and television. To many listeners, he represented sincerity and emotional openness at a time when irony dominated popular music. Born in Indiana, Hoon grew up in a small-town environment that shaped his introspective nature. He showed artistic curiosity early, gravitating toward music and performance. Moving west expanded his opportunities but also exposed him to industry pressure. Rapid success came before emotional stability. Fame magnified insecurities he already carried, shaping a personality that was both charismatic and deeply sensitive. In the months before his death, concerns about his health increased. Touring schedules remained intense as personal responsibilities grew. He had recently become a father, a change that brought both hope and stress. Friends noticed mood swings and exhaustion. Attempts to balance creative demands with personal life proved difficult. The constant movement of life on the road left little space for recovery or reflection. The reaction from fans and musicians was one of shock and sadness. Many felt they had lost a voice that spoke gently in a noisy era. Critics later reassessed Blind Melon's work, recognizing its depth beyond a single hit. His recordings continued to gain appreciation over time. Shannon Hoon is remembered for emotional authenticity, melodic grace, and a legacy defined by honesty rather than excess. Number 9. Andrew Wood. March 19, 1990, in Seattle, the The event followed several days in a coma after being found unresponsive. Medical authorities confirmed a fatal heroin overdose that led to severe oxygen deprivation. Despite intensive care, his condition did not improve. There were no signs of outside involvement. The official conclusion identified complications from drug intoxication as the cause, ending his life at just the moment his career was beginning to break through. Andrew Wood was the lead singer of Mother Love Bone, a band positioned at the center of the emerging Seattle rock scene. His flamboyant stage presence and poetic lyrics set him apart from darker grunge contemporaries. He blended classic rock theatrics with raw emotional expression. Industry insiders viewed him as a future star. His charisma and confidence helped shape the sound and spirit that would soon define an entire musical movement. Born in Mississippi and raised in Washington State, Wood grew up surrounded by music and creative encouragement. He showed early talent and a desire to perform. Music became both identity and purpose. As his bands evolved, so did his ambition. Seattle's tight-knit scene fueled collaboration and competition. Beneath the confidence, he struggled with personal vulnerability. The pressure to succeed combined with an appetite for excess shaped his choices. In the months leading up to his death, friends and bandmates expressed growing concern. Attempts to manage his habits came as the band signed a major record deal. Excitement about the future existed alongside visible strain. Touring and recording demands increased rapidly. The contrast between professional momentum and personal instability became sharper. Those close to him sensed urgency, but time moved faster than intervention. The response to his death rippled through the music world. Fellow musicians were shaken, many later crediting his loss as a turning point. Several artists went on to create tribute projects that shaped the future of alternative rock. Fans mourned what felt like an unrealized promise. Critics later recognized his influence on the Seattle sound. Andrew Wood remains remembered as a catalyst, a voice whose brief presence left a lasting imprint on rock history. Number 10. Hillel Slovak. June 25, 1988. In Los Angeles, the event occurred inside his apartment after a period of isolation. Medical authorities determined a fatal heroin overdose. Toxicology findings confirmed acute intoxication consistent with accidental ingestion. There were no signs of violence or outside involvement. The ruling concluded accidental death, ending the life of a musician whose influence had already reshaped a band and a genre. Hillel Slovak was the original guitarist and a founding member of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. His playing fused funk rhythms with punk energy, creating a signature sound that defined the band's early identity. His chemistry with the group brought urgency and groove to their music. Audiences recognized his expressive style and fearless experimentation. He helped lay the foundation for a band that would later become one of the most successful acts in American rock history. Born in Israel and raised in California, Slovak grew up navigating cultural change and artistic curiosity. Music became his language of belonging. He immersed himself in Los Angeles underground scenes, absorbing funk, punk, and rock influences. Early success arrived fast and young. With it came exposure to excess without structure. Creativity flourished alongside risk. His personality blended warmth and intensity, devotion to friends, and an all-consuming commitment to music. In the period before his death, health concerns became more evident. Friends noticed withdrawal and physical decline. The band attempted to continue working while urging stability. Internal tension grew as concern mixed with frustration. The pressure of expectations and identity as an artist weighed heavily. Attempts to regain balance were inconsistent. The line between creative escape and personal harm had blurred, leading to a quiet and irreversible outcome. The reaction reverberated through the music community. Bandmates were devastated and faced a crossroads that would redefine their future. Fellow musicians spoke about the cost of unchecked excess. Fans mourned a talent whose contributions were essential yet often overlooked. In time, his influence became clearer through the music that followed. Hillel Slovak is remembered as a creative catalyst whose spirit lives on through the sound he helped create. Thank you for watching and taking this journey through music history. If you want more stories like this, please subscribe for future episodes. Take care, and see you next time.